I think it irritates costume designers when a magazine showcases a movie or a show and shows their designs and their look that they've created and doesn't credit the costume designer. I think that that's a bit unfair, but I personally am a huge collaborator and have been over the years, and would love to collaborate more with fashion designers and be able to work together on projects. Seeing you all just makes me want to go to Italy right now.
Hello, Denise.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, so good to see you guys.
Hi.
Finally.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm okay. It's a little bit crazy here still, but we're doing okay.
Okay.
Where are you now?
I'm at my office at Paramount. I just got back onto the lot. Everything is still pretty, shut down. We're slowly starting to open back up again.
How did you start your costume design career?
Yeah.
How everything started?
I was in fashion. I started in fashion very young. In the 80s, I was a club kid. I was into punk rock and new wave and would go to the clubs every night. And we would always make these crazy outfits. And I got a job when I was 16 working at a clothing store on Melrose. By the owners, they ended up starting a brand called Lucky Brand. It's the denim company, big in the United States. But back then it was called Bongo. And I worked there, and then I moved to New York when I was 18 years old and worked in another clothing store for a Turkish designer and learned all about fashion from that end, buying, manufacturing. And then I met a stylist, and when I was 18, I started assisting, and I literally worked my way up. For years, I was an assistant for a long time doing music videos, photo shoots, commercials. And then I think when I was 20 years old, I assisted on my first feature, and that was a Tony Scott movie shooting in Mexico. I think the film that I had the most fun doing certainly was a movie called Cruel Intentions. It was a very, very low budget, small movie at the time. And I have to say, on that film, Prada gave me boxes of clothes for Ryan Philippe to wear. He had just started modeling for them, and it was so helpful. There are certain films like that movie where people have a lot of money and they are buying expensive clothes. And there are movies like Crazy Rich Asians or Devil Wears Prada where it is important that they do wear designer clothes. And then there are certain movies where it doesn't make sense for somebody to wear designer clothes. When I've worked with Robert De Niro twice, and the first time I worked with him, I was an assistant, and he walked into the fitting room and he looked at the labels, and there was Armani, and he said, my character would not wear any of these clothes. He said, go back, go to JCPenney, go to Kmart, go to Sears. That's where my character would buy his clothes. So I find that really interesting because you're creating a character. And if that character wears expensive clothes, then that's what that character should be wearing. And again, I made a lot of clothes for Cruel Intentions as well, and took designs that kind of harkened back to the Dangerous Liaison period and did bustiers and made Ryan a long frock coat from a piece that I found at Western Costume, and I just redesigned it myself and put bright fuchsia lining. So I think there's a combination of design and just creating a world and a look. And yes, some of that is using designer pieces, which I'm happy to do and happy to give credit to those people as well. I watched the Ralph Simmons documentary, and I would have a heart attack if I had to create a line in 6 weeks and wonder if the whole world would like it or not. That's incredible and truly an art in and of itself. That's not what I do. I love movies. I love storytelling. I love characters. I love thinking about the character. And I don't know, in high school here, they have most likely to be something. Like when I was a senior in high school, I was voted most likely to be a fashion designer and most likely to be a psychologist. So I feel like I do both, because so much what I do is about thinking about the character. I read a script, all I do is think about the character and think about what this character would wear, why this character would wear it. And so I just did a movie with Russell Crowe that's coming out July 10th. Now, Russell has basically one change through the whole movie. We talked for 6 hours in various fittings about what that one change would be, and really had to decide who this like everyman character would be. We must have tried, I mean, we decided it was going to be basically a windbreaker, a chambray shirt, and khakis. We tried on so many versions of that, different color. We ended up altering it. I mean, it was a long discussion about, he's very, very, very thoughtful and very thoughtful about the character. And it was interesting. He went down a rabbit hole of his character that I was fascinated by. And to me, that is my joy, to help an actor find out who that character is. I just get such great joy out of that. It's been a long time since I've done a series like Melrose Place, and I did it for 4 years, and it was too long. I find I personally like telling a story beginning, middle, end. You create a character, there's an arc of that character, and then it's finished. I think when you're on a series, the character becomes the character, and it becomes, for me, it just becomes a little bit not boring. It just becomes, you don't get to establish a new character. I prefer features, and the show that I'm working on now, that I'm prepping before we went down with COVID, is all 1970s. And even though it's a limited series, it's kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's not a long running series. I don't know if I have the stamina for the long running series anymore.
Let's go back to fashion. How influential are right now TV series in launching trends? And I would say sometimes brands.
I think that one influences the other. I really believe that. I feel what people see in magazines influences them, what people see on television or films. And I think it all is, especially now with media the way it is and everything is out there. Again, like I said, in Melrose Place, there wasn't internet. We didn't have the same access to seeing everything. And I read all the fashion magazines. I see everything, and you have to be able to absorb it. And I think we influence each other. I mean, right now I'm completely influenced by the 70s. I am deep into the 70s, and I am really, really loving it. And there are a lot of contemporary brands that are doing 70s, and I can see their influence, and hopefully this show will influence more people to do that. And I feel like things are cyclical. I feel with 80s trends come back, and I don't know about the 90s. I feel like I already lived it. I don't know if I want it to come back so soon. I'd rather go back to the 60s.
Many swear that your next project will influence a lot. I come back to 70s.
Hope it does. Yeah, I hope it does. I mean, I'll come back when we're finished shooting, and we'll discuss it and to see how it went. Yeah,
Yes.
We just need to Hollywood really needs to get back into shooting safely. Yes. There were a lot of very, very big shows that were, as you know, from Hollywood quarantine. There were a lot of big shows that were put on hold, and I think it is absolutely shocking that the whole entire industry shut down. I don't know if I ever imagined seeing that in my lifetime. The industry just shut down. On the Russell Crowe movie, there was no fashion. I mean, I didn't use designers. I think that there's a balance. I would love to work closely with designers in the future. I think it would be fantastic. I'm a collaborator. I've always been a collaborator. If I was in a sport, I would be on a soccer team. I would not be a long distance runner. I like collaborating with my crew, with the producers, with the actors. Some people don't work that way. They like to work alone and create in their head. I don't. I love working with people, and I think it's important. And I do the same thing with my assistants. I'm such a supportive person. I mentor my assistants, and then I love to see them move on and get jobs on their own. And I think that it's important that we are a more inclusive society in general.
Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, this is a very critical moment in which fashion needs to find new business opportunities. And wardrobe departments needs more and more and more resources, because we were talking about movies and TV series and timing and rushing and everything. But we said the dialogue is not always easy because there isn't a deep knowledge. So can you explain what are the needs of the costume designer and the wardrobe departments in terms of garment, accessories, and buying and made to order, everything? What a wardrobe department needs for a production, TV or movie production?
Well, so obviously some films have a bigger budget, and some you have more time and more money to do it. I find being able to access different companies worldwide, like you were saying earlier, and having that resource would be amazing. I love to branch out. I would love to be able to use European designers or accessories, or fabric, especially the fabric. I feel like we don't have the best fabric that we could, and designing fabric yourself, that would be amazing. And especially sometimes when I shoot in states like Georgia, which I do a lot, my last 7 movies have been in Georgia, they have 2 fabric stores, and they're not good ones. So it would be really nice to be able to have access to more fabric, and again, going back to Melrose Place, I loved using designers nobody heard about. And I did use a ton of BCBG and at that time as well, but I loved finding people, and I loved giving people a break or a chance or exposure. And again, I'm very willing to give those people credit. I'm very generous that way. And I hope that magazines do the same with designers, because I know that's been a big issue with costume designers. And I'm sure you guys have spoken to costume designers. It really bothers people when they're not credited. And I think the other problem with, if you're doing some sort of, and as you know, I'm sure from having students, collaborations are very big, collaborations with different companies. It is difficult nowadays to do collaborations because it is so bureaucratic. Usually the companies are owned by corporations. So if a big fashion house is owned by a bigger corporation and a movie's being done by a bigger studio, then there are all sorts of hoops you have to jump through. There's legal hoops, there's how are you going to market this? And it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of people that need to approve it. It's not just a costume designer and a fashion designer talking, saying, hey, why don't we collaborate on this? And why don't you make this for me? And again, I realize that stylists are in a completely different world. I mean, than what we do. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other ball game, because I know they work directly with designers sometimes to have designers make stuff for actors, but that is not what I do at all. And people, sometimes I work with actors and they're like, can you design me for the red carpet? And I was like, absolutely not. It's not my forte. The stylists do that, and they do a really good job about it. So staying in my lane.